Hello, it is Cinematic Psychology, back from the dead after a 2-year hiatus. And when I say back from the dead, I wasn't literally dead. I was not kidnapped. I wasn't fighting in the army. I was not drunk in a ditch. I was discouraged from making videos because I couldn't figure out how to make a clear, crisp audio. Yep, very admirable, I know. But I'm here. I'm trying again with this clunky, beautiful microphone right here to get back on my soapbox and readdress a topic that I actually have already talked about 2 years ago in my satire video, How to Spot a Narcissist, which I'll link in the description below, of the alarming trend of armchair psychology within especially YouTube and TikTok and other forms of very accessible media. However, I would argue that this problem is even more prevalent within the DSM-5 and even the entire psychological community as well. Now, I'm going to be using the "Is your ex a narcissist" for shorthand for a much wider issue, and it's not always going to be about narcissists. It could be any sort of psychological diagnosis that you could potentially subscribe to somebody, but it's almost always about personality disorders or attachment styles, the most common ones being narcissism, borderline personality disorder, dismissive avoidant attachment style, fearful avoidant attachment style, and antisocial personality disorder. And narcissism, of course, reigns king. So what you will see is you will go on YouTube and you will see an entire industry based on diagnosing the people around you. And it is thousands, and I mean thousands of people who get on their mics with really no other qualifications more than me or you, who will spout absolute bullshit onto the camera and then profit off of it. They'll try to give you clues on how to navigate certain situations, how to see if somebody is this or if somebody is that, trying to give you concrete answers to things that really can't be answered, and to try to teach you how to control people that you have no business trying to control. And what do they get out of this? Money. Duh. The quickest way to figure out if one of these videos is a how to figure out video, get the irony there? Get it? Is, are they selling anything? And every video is selling something. They're trying to get attention. They're trying to get views, especially if they're getting enough views to be monetized. But are they selling a course? How to get your ex back course? Are they selling books? Are they selling your soul? They're selling something, and the damage that they're doing to society is huge and is quantifiable. They're damaging their consumers, and they're damaging everybody the consumer interacts with, and they're making the world a worse place. Now, let's talk about three things. I'm going to break this video down into three basic components. The first is how we get sucked into these videos in the first place. How did this cultural trend even spread? The second will be analyzing the negative effects of these videos, and the third will be finding alternatives for how we can navigate the world in a more healthy, realistic way that actually makes society better and not shittier. So, why is this such an industry in the first place? Well, it's really understandable if you think about it. Let's just imagine for a second that you've been hurt, okay? It could be an ex-lover, and most of the time these are marketed towards people who have an ex-boyfriend, let's be honest. Or it could have been a shitty boss, or maybe you're unpacking a lot of trauma, a lot of hardship from your childhood, and it can be overwhelming. And you just want to understand things because you want to feel safe. You want to feel like you're not going to get hurt again. And these videos give you a false sense of safety. You find these videos and they are a bit accurate, just like a psychic is a bit accurate, just like any con is based on a little bit of truth. Yes, people who are very arrogant are more likely to take you for granted. This is true. People who have unstable emotions are more likely to behave in erratic ways. You don't need an expert to tell you this. And they start to fit into your experience, and they start to give you a false sense of clarity on what happened. And the more you consume them, the safer that you get. Not really, though, just the safer you imagine yourself to get. And they profit off of this because everybody gets hurt. Just like that REM song, everybody hurts. And everybody needs to feel like they can navigate the world. Now, why is such a toxic narrative easier to digest compared to actual deeper answers that are harder to find? Well, because they allow you to avoid two extremely difficult things. One of those things is obvious, which is the difficulty of taking accountability and analyzing your role in a situation. I won't even criticize anybody who has problems with that because that's the human condition. I've never in my entire life, and I've met some very wonderful people, found a single human being in the world who can 100% take accountability for all of their actions in a completely humble and unbiased way. It's really, really, really hard to see the way that we affect things, the way we fail to communicate, the way that we overlook other people's needs, the way that we're less empathetic. And it's a lot easier to externalize our problems and look at the people around us. You shouldn't even be ashamed of that. You should just try to recognize that it's not easy and to try to make an active effort to step out of yourself as much as you can. But despite the fact that it's hard to take accountability for your actions, there's something a hell of a lot harder, which is when you didn't do anything wrong. So let's imagine, for example, I don't know, a relationship, because those are the most quintessential examples of these videos. You showed up authentically, right? You came in and you tried to love the other person as much as you can. You gave them the space that they asked for. You tried to see from their point of view. You were consistent. You were reliable. You were kind. You know, you really worked hard for this, and you still got hurt, and they still didn't love you. That's fucking scary. It really is. It's terrifying, because it's one thing if you did something wrong. Oh, I can fix the fact that I threw a plate at his head, and then it will go better next time. That's actually easier. But if there's nothing that you can really pinpoint about what went wrong, that's terrifying, because it means that you could do everything in your power and still not be loved or valued or appreciated, and you could still get hurt. And a darker thought that might follow is that there's a chance that you'll never be loved, no matter what you do. Try swallowing that pill. Now, instead, you could swallow a pill that says, don't worry about it. He was a narcissist. Right? Because if you can't truly find anything that you did wrong, whether or not you did something wrong, let's say you can't, there's got to be something wrong with him or your boss or your parent or whoever. He's got to be a monster, right? All you have to do is look at this list of red flags, buy our $100 a month course, and you'll never have this problem again. The next person you date will be loving and kind, and everything will be fine. But that's not actually how life works. It's not. Now, let's talk about what happens when you get too consumed by consuming this. When you get too involved in this sort of trend, this is going to hurt you, and it's going to hurt society as a whole. So let's say you take this content in from an externalized point of view and you look at the people around you with it. What you're going to do is you're going to develop a habit of blaming other people for the problems that you encounter. And you're going to stop looking at situations from a holistic way. And what happens when you start becoming more resentful, you start becoming less trusting, is people like you less. Your relationships diminish. You find yourself more alienated. And what can you do in those situations? You can go right back to those videos, like a cigarette addiction, because one equivalent of these things is, I would say that this is the psychological equivalent of tobacco. And it becomes a cycle where you become angrier and angrier and alienated and more alienated, and you keep diving deeper and deeper into this thought process. Or potentially you split people. People are either all good until they disappoint you, and then bam, they're a narcissist, and you're alone. I've seen this play out, actually, with one of the worst people I've ever met. She was a very brief friend of mine. We didn't have a very long friendship, but I was the only friend that she had at the time. And she was gorgeous. She was blonde hair, supermodel good looks, perfect face, perfect body, perfectly perfect, right? Externally. And what she liked to do, her type, was very, very wealthy men. Men that I don't even think she was genuinely attracted to. She was just interested in wealthy men. And a lot of them were even married. Didn't bother her. But what did bother her was anytime they did something she didn't want them to do, whether or not she even communicated that. Let's say they had a date for 9 o'clock and he told her that he couldn't be there till 9:15. He became a narcissist every single time. And she would call me and rant about how this person was a narcissist, this person was an egoist, this person was bad, this person was horrible. Every single time she didn't get her way. And she would watch videos after videos and videos, and she would try to quote unquote educate me about narcissism. But she was the loneliest person I ever met. Our friendship ended after 2 months when we were at a bar and some guy asked for my number instead of hers. And she spent the entire car ride home screaming about me being a desperate slut. And then she had no friends. But she had her YouTube videos. Now, she's a bit of an extreme case, but in all of those videos, despite the fact that she was a very flawed girl, she never questioned herself. She never analyzed herself. She never used that to dive deeper into what makes her her and try to be better. No, it was always finding the faults in other people. Now, let's say you do analyze those videos from a more internal lens, trying to see yourself in them. That can be just as bad, if not worse. I'll tell you a story of my own life. And yeah, it can be a bit vulnerable, but if it helps make my message clear, fine, I'll dox myself internally. I'll, soul vomit a little bit for you guys. So when I was 20, I was a psychology major in college. And when I was taking the Psychology of Personality course, I learned about borderline personality disorder. And at the time, it checked all my boxes. It seemed to fit me perfectly. And I felt like I found myself. Which is weird because at 32, none of it describes me anymore. At 20, I was terrified of abandonment. At 32, I'm actually hyper independent. At 20, I had a huge chronic problem with angry outbursts. At 32, I get angry maybe once or twice a year. At 20, I had no sense of self. At 32, I know exactly who I am and I like myself quite a bit. At 20, I was partying all the time. At 32, I eat salmon and avocados and I go on hikes. Now, I didn't fix this. I didn't magically get cured. I just grew up. I didn't know that, though, at the time. I thought that this was the person that I was going to be for the rest of my life. And I felt so intrinsically broken. Felt hopeless because a personality disorder is forever, right? No, I was a fucking kid. And you go online and what do you see? So much hatred, borderline personality disorders, like everybody's like a femme fatale, crazy ex-girlfriend, stalker, disaster, train wreck, right? And you start believing in that and you start acting on those impulses. And actually I found that diving deeper into my unhealthy tendencies was heavily rewarded because weirdly enough, borderline personality disorder is extremely sexualized. And I found that when I played a certain part, the men around me were very much attracted to that. Not because I was healthy or kind or a good partner, but because I was fitting a part that society sexualizes quite a bit. And that was keeping me even further stuck. And I think that this can happen to anybody who identifies with any personality disorder of any kind, is that it can actually make you worse. Now, I'm going to make another equivalent. I just basically said that these armchair psychology videos are the equivalent of psychology tobacco. I'm also going to say that they're the equivalent of psychology eugenics. Because what they're doing is they're taking traits that sometimes are our faults and sometimes aren't, grouping them with other traits, the reverse of the halo effect, like the demon effect, like if somebody's arrogant, therefore they're exploitative or whatever, labeling that person something that they're going to be stuck with forever and dehumanizing them completely. And what does this do for people who are actually more vulnerable? For example, people who have bipolar disorder, people who have autism, people who have PTSD, who are more likely to be fitting into those boxes and have negative patterns and get associated with them. It alienates them even further, and it keeps us from striving to actually love and care for the people around us. If you don't believe me, why don't you check out Dr. Ramani's video, How to Spot a Narcissist by Their Eyebrows. She is quite literally examining a physical trait of another human being to consider them worse than others. That is the definition of eugenics. This is like straight up Nazism. The most ironic part about it is Dr. Ramani is definitely a narcissist. Nobody in the entire world would spend this much time looking at themselves in the mirror, or the camera, I guess, making rants and rants and rants about absolute bullshit, cashing in on it, and not be a narcissist. That is if narcissism actually existed. I'm going to make a bold claim, and you don't have to agree with me on this, but I don't think personality disorders exist at all. I think circumstances, life events, and some biological tendencies we have can push us in directions to behave in certain ways, and I absolutely don't think that they are fixed. And I don't even think that you need to pay a therapist hundreds of dollars a year to try to fix you. I think that we can decide who we are to a certain extent. Now, do people exist in this world that fit into the sort of collective understanding of what narcissism is? Yeah. Some of the people I love more than anything in the world would fit into those boxes. And have they hurt me in the past? Yes. But did they hurt me because they have a weak sense of self or intense feelings of superiority or a need for admiration? No. They hurt me because of their actions. People don't hurt people because of who they are. They hurt them because of their actions. And that is the only thing. The only fucking thing that we can judge somebody on is their actions. That is it. And whether or not there's a consistent pattern of actions that is healthy for us to include in our lives or to allow for the people that we get close to. That's all. But you don't have to agree with me. Some people think that personality disorders can be good for processing their own tendencies as well as navigating the world around them. But please, if you subscribe to that worldview, stop giving these armchair psychologists any money and stop perpetuating this narrative. So what can we do instead? Well, a couple of things, okay? You're hurt, you're confused, you want to get better. I really strongly recommend stop looking at things from an external lens and start looking at them from an internal lens. What is going on in your own head? What is going on with the way that you perceive things, the way that you act? How do you navigate things? And how can we fix that to get better results? So one YouTube psychology influencers that I really strongly recommend that has been very helpful for my own personal healing is Heidi Priebe. She doesn't, for example, look at how to spot a dismissive avoidant or how to control a dismissive avoidant, how to make them miss you. But like, if you have dismissive avoidant tendencies, this is what's going on in your head. These are how the patterns are happening, and here's how to break them. She approaches things from what's going on in your head and how to fix them. I think that is a much healthier way to look at the world. But let's say you got really hurt by somebody and you're trying to process that relationship and you just want to understand more clearly and you do believe in narcissism or you do believe in BPD or whatever. Why are you turning to these outsiders with questionable credentials to tell you what is going on? Why don't you listen to influencers who actually live in that headspace? People who consider themselves narcissists, people who consider themselves to have borderline personality disorder, because they have more of an expertise to explain their own thought processes and what they're going on. And they are being more vulnerable in outing themselves. So they probably have, they're probably speaking from a more authentic place. So please constantly strive to try to find the truth or as close to the truth as you can and not the easy way out. Because when you take the easy way out, this bullshit wins. Thank you. Good night.